Hi, good to see some familiar faces in the chat. Thanks for taking the time to join for the playthrough of Art of the Matter. This is my first stream, so I've got no idea how this is going to go. Got the chat open alongside the laptop, so I'll check that every now and then to see if there's any questions or that kind of thing popping up. But otherwise, I'll give Art of the Matter a run through. Yeah, thanks also for Kayala for nagging to keep to actually make a playthrough recording for once. And happy birthday to Kayala. Hope you're having a good time. I'll just switch off the webcam and fire up TFE. Let's see. There's a whole list of maps to choose from. Where is it? Here we go. Heart of the Matter. Um, Yeah, let's see where to start. Again, if there are any questions along the way, just feel free to ask them, and I'll give a shot at answering them. But no, I started working on this map. I think about a year ago, June, July, give or take. It was the end of the sports season, so I had plenty of spare time on my hands. Um, so I figured I'd have a look at the current state of Dark Forces. I hadn't played it for actually for ages. I think my last involvement in the community would have been around what 2000, 2010, 2009. Released one small map at the time, Space Station B24. I think I was fairly active in the community at that time, but then went to university and that kind of stuff. So I really completely dropped out of everything regarding Dark Forces. So it's really cool to see that there's actually a community being built up around the Force engine. To see, yeah, popped in Discord, saw that Matthias was working on revisiting Kharkov. So there are a couple of new maps I hadn't played, like Fish's map um, amongst the shadows. And the mind contest, of course. So figured I'd start working out how WD Fuse worked, because I did all my mapping in Dark Forge on the map on the Mac before. So that's how Heart of the Matter kind of started. It was just an experiment starting off to learn how WD Fuse works. Kind of got out of hand. Yeah, and I guess I'll just dive in. So yeah, if the audio of the game is too loud or anything, just give a shout. I'll see if I can mix it lower. But yeah, Matthias, WD Fuse was new for me. Dark Forge, I think, was based on Defuse, and there are lots of bugs in there. I remember from the time. So in a lot of ways, WD Fuse was way easier than I actually remembered. Um, Also, stuff like making a briefing. Couldn't do that on the Mac back in the day, but now there's just this cool DF21 widget to do that. So that's super useful. Yeah, there wasn't really much thought into the mission. It's just say, hey, Kyle, there's an Imperial base out there, and you can go blow it up. Don't ask too many questions. We don't tell you what the facility is. We don't know what they're doing there. But there's some sequencer couplings, and you can place your charges there. So it's all familiar territory. Put in a few Easter eggs in the briefing. Captain Convogate has smuggled us in. A familiar face from Kharkov, and there's a couple of other references throughout the map. Yeah, and Track Andresk from Beyond Glory, also a side character from other maps. I'm going to dive in on hard. I've got no idea how that'll go. I haven't played the map properly for a while, but I've got a couple of save games ready just in case everything goes pear-shaped. Right, so we're in the starting elevator. The idea was just to really show a really big open area from the start. So big deep canyon that you just couldn't do in vanilla DF. You just get homes all over the place. And originally, this was going to be a whole starting area at the top of the elevator and a whole descent with multiple levels. Started out on that and just kind of ditched it because it wasn't really going anywhere. It's really, yeah, not fun to work on. So I just ditched it and thought, well, let's start in the middle of things. Yeah, there's one rebel crate in the elevator. The Imperials didn't notice the logo. They just loaded up anyway. So Carl has been smuggled into the base. The intention of this map, and you'll see it throughout. There aren't really that many custom assets in there. There's some things like a concussion commando, and here and there there's some custom textures and audio. But in general, these are going to be mostly just vanilla stock assets. And the intention overall was really to, uh, yeah, to stick fairly closely to the original look and feel of Dark Forces, uh, but to make it tougher. I've been playing some Doom maps for a while, so yeah. Again, let's see how this goes. Just start out slowly. Yeah, so auto aim's off, so my aim is terrible. Um, But one of the things I was really trying to do was make a yeah, a map that looked fairly similar to vanilla Dark Forces, but just doing stuff that would really push it over the edge back in the day. So more subsectors, larger areas. And what I really was playing with a lot is some height variations. I really try and do that a lot in my maps. So you've got a little ledge up here and a little ledge up here, just to make sure that there's different angles that enemies are firing from. So try and avoid, where possible, like long hallways with tons of enemies, but try and have a few, well, not less enemies, but just put them in more challenging places where you just have to have a look uh, to look where enemies are. Yeah, so everything's really gated off with a yellow a key, I think, the whole starting area. So the intention is just to kind of feel like Kyle is infiltrating through an old freight area, a bit disused, a bit dark and grimier. Yeah, so a lot of this stuff was really just me working out as I go along. Yeah, the first of many turrets. Oh crap, this is really going well right from the start. Um, there's a fun fact. This is one of the experimental areas to work out. I've been playing Doom. Alien Vendetta was one of the map sets I played. Really classic. And this is kind of copied or inspired by an area in yeah, thanks, that's right, Mystery Halleck. Really awesome, probably one of the, maybe the best map for Doom ever. And just looking back on how long I spent just making this area with all the little ledges and the texturing, and thinking how much easier that is now. I've kind of got more of a workflow. Well, that's just a huge difference. And I'll just note, I know where the enemies are, and I think the way I try and design my maps on hard, it kind of assumes that you know where stuff is and where the enemies are and where the secrets are. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure it would be tough to get through. Medium, I'd usually design that an experienced player can not just stroll through, but you're probably not going to lose all the lives by the end of it. And easy is just meant to be a nice, easy cruise. So a little effect to start here. Hit the switch, and this light descends and lights up part of the storage area. So this is also just an early experiment with stuff that you saw in a lot of Doom boards, where you've got these like light streaks going from light to dark, gradually shading also on the crates. I did it in a couple of spots in the map, and in the end, I kind of just dropped it because it's so much effort to do consistently. But I think in some key areas, the effect still works quite nicely. Yeah, and up here, it's a door also locked by a key. So the main starting area of this map is really intended like just find the air ducts, climb up ledges, and find out how to really get into the base. There we go. And a mortar cannon should come in useful. So yeah, the stuff that I was trying to focus on once I was a little bit further were things like little red lights just to indicate, okay, where is this air duct? So you can kind of see it from the distance. You sort of know where you need to go. You just need to work out how to get there. And I think it was okay in this map, but it's better in later maps as well. Yeah, so the classic air ducts. There's always air ducts, and they always just happen to go exactly where you need to go. And there's a corridor up here, some enemies. Let's deal with that first. Right, so yeah, a general access key, so you'll need that. And yeah, stuff like putting a little shield down there to draw a bit of attention. It's the kind of thing, yeah, try and pay attention to that to make it sort of clear where the player needs to go. This area is actually a bit of a coincidence. I'd raised the stairs and had these little ledges off the side. And originally, these were just doors you'd go through, and I found it so bloody annoying that you just kept dropping off the edges. That's I kind of figured, okay, um, yeah, let's just actually just integrate that into the layout and make the player find a way down there. Yeah, Matthias, some of the stuff that I really like seeing in maps, and I'm a bit inconsistent with that, but other little things like yeah, so the stairs aren't quite straight. They've got a little edge to them, but the ceiling is straight. So it's actually quite a lot of sector work to make these cross-cutting beams, but it doesn't end up looking too cluttered. So with all the sort of the limits that have been raised in the Force engine, um, find it fairly tough to yeah, add sector detail without it ending up looking too cluttered and busy with loads of different textures and lighting and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think this staircase is an area where that's planned out okay. So again, some red lights just to kind of indicate the way. These stormtroopers just didn't see the guy trip off the set. So people are just falling over all the time here. So on a couple of playthroughs, this was an area that people found tough to work out. Okay, there's all these locked doors. Where do I go? There's this obscure little air vent. You can spot it with the auto map, but I guess it's a little bit too hidden and obscure if you're not familiar with the layout. And it brings you to a key. Yeah, the general access key and a nice little smoking area for the Imperials. Um, yeah, and this whole lighting construction. One thing that's I think quite fun once you actually start building ledges and stuff like that goes up and down in the map. You kind of find little opportunities for secrets or alternative routes. This is one of these things. I'd already set up the lights and this whole area, and then kind of realized, well, if you raise the light again, it would actually open up space for a little ledge on the other side of the light. And that's the kind of stuff that I think works quite nicely for yeah, a little secret. So you're not just jumping from ledge to ledge, but also in some areas a little bit of lateral thinking, how to get from one place to another, or just doing stuff you wouldn't usually do and being rewarded for it. So there's a lot of little cramped staircases. I guess the idea here was to make it feel more like a maintenance area. So some of the classic yellow and black lines. Some of these areas are maybe a little bit too cramped. But you get the key, and that opens up all the doors. And yeah, Matthias, I think I agree. The texturing is fairly fairly monotonous. But again, I really was trying to I think stick fairly closely to the look and feel of yeah, the original Dark Forces. So not too many big flashy set pieces, but just really kind of feel like it could be an original map, but just bigger kind of stuff. More turrets. Could use a few less of those on hard, to be honest. Kind of blend into the geometry with this model. So I like the model more that I use in later maps. I think that came from Jedi Outcast. So just a small little switch to open the office, Moff Gideon's office. I figured, oh, if it's a research facility, let's just throw in that guy as well. Um, what I kind of like about how this whole area of the map panned out is there's actually a whole bunch of different routes you can take to get through it, to get to the main central area with the office. So you can approach from each direction. The combat will be slightly different each time. Losing more and more health. I kind of like that in maps where it's not too linear. I think later in the map it became a little bit too linear for my taste, but I just like rewarding the player for trying different angles, finding different approaches. You could go through this way, but you could also approach the command center from a different direction. Yes. Um, and another thing I quite liked doing, I did this quite late in the map, for all these little terminals around the map. It's had all these little nooks and crannies and had some secret areas, but I felt, well, at some point you can't just give the player more and more items. So I tried to do something different. I don't think I've really seen that in a DF map until then. Um, so I just added these little terminals, like in games you'd pick up these memos, stuff like "No one lives forever," and I think they started with that, with a little, yeah, semi-humorous memos that you'd have around. So apparently the Imperials, they have agile, they have sprint reviews. Yeah, but Moff Gideon is more of a waterfall manager, I guess. Project manager that shoots people if stuff is delayed. Oh, we all saw how that ends in Andor, of course. There's always a bigger fish. Yeah, so I stuck a couple of these around the map and figured I'd put a little reward in at the end of the map for the players that were curious. Hmm, so sure why it's not picking up those items. Maybe I'd made them energy items by accident.
You're in violation.
Nope, we're not going to do that here. Yeah, so lots of low-powered enemies. Okay, there you are. Yeah, so stuff like this really took me ages when I started out on this map. I was really just working out how to connect areas together and how to make them somewhat interesting. So I think I started out with like the yeah, part of the starting area and the canal area later on, and the computer center. And then this was really like, okay, to answer the question, Ben, did I have an overall plan? No, I definitely did not. I think usually what I did, and I do still do sometimes, is just make discrete areas with a clear purpose. The data center fight and yeah, the crate area with the big lights, and then try and work out, okay, but how could these fit together in an interesting way? I mean, that's pretty easy in WD Fuse. You just select a whole bunch of sectors, and you can just move them around and snap them to other doors. So it's pretty easy just to, stick them somewhere else on the map. Um, and let's see. Yeah, so for example, the data center was originally like in this part of the map, and then I just moved it over to the west later on. And then like I think this whole area to the north was just filling in all the gaps and working out, okay, how can I use space to get from one place to another? Actually, oh, that's not going to go well. Actually, I kind of like how those sort of areas really turn out in the end. So I noticed with the like arenas, you go in one door and it's like the same fight every single time. And what I really like, okay, not right now, but what I usually really like about this kind of design is you've got no idea exactly where the enemies are going to end up. So this whole area is really set up to have some height differences. You've got the lower ledge here, the higher ledge here. So if you'd approach this door, you'd be fired up by guys at the top. And if you come from the top, well, there's guys down here. And there's lots of little stairs, so they can actually move around from one area to the other quite freely. So I think when setting up a map, pretty good to try and work out what can you like connect areas together with low steps to make sure there's not too many obstacles for enemies. I mean, unless you really want to choreograph areas, like make sure that they fire from certain ledges at the player. Um, but no, in general, if enemies can just move around, it makes stuff a little bit more unpredictable, and I think just a bit more fun to play with. So you can see the starting elevator going up again. No real reason to do that except just an excuse for not going back there. Thanks to SecBase Unlimited. Not sure if you're in the chats, but thanks for the 45 degrees force field textures. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff. So I think what I was really trying to do, lots of corridors that really feel like vanilla DF. And then the occasional view like this, where you think, hang on a second, this is bigger than it should be. It's still fairly blocky. It's not like there's lots of sector detailing. It's just really big. And yeah, sometimes I think it'd be kind of cool if someone would just go back to some of the vanilla maps, Arc Hammer and Executor, and just make like some bigger views. I really like what people are doing with the Imperial City map as well to give some alternative views and fuel station, that kind of stuff. Let's see, where does it go next? everyone's favorite weapon, the fusion cutter. I like it. Yeah, definitely reimagine, not completely redoing everything, but just slight improvements. Um, yeah, about the texture pass, I think that's probably the toughest thing. So yeah, because this whole area was like I had this bridge here. I knew in the end that was going to go to the control center, and I kind of knew that there's going to be stuff up here. And then you end up with all these like odd edges where you're just trying to work out, okay, how do I get that on the left to line up here on the right? And oh, that texture cuts off at the top. There we go. Yeah, so then you just end up doing stuff like having this ceiling ledge to make sure that the texture doesn't get suddenly cut off, and you're making sure all the wall length's exactly right. And I like yeah, stuff like this texture. You can actually fairly easily just cut off a couple of pixels on the left or on the right, and yeah, line it up, and it doesn't look too different. But these sort of big central areas, they can be a pretty big challenge to actually get textured nicely. Like you got all these areas, you know where they should go, and then you just find out it's off by 2 or 3 DFU. Yeah, so you got another memo. This one referencing a couple of characters from other DF maps and Rogue One, of course. Going smoothly. Stuff in design. Yeah, this is meant to be like a small office for Moff Gideon if he happens to be here. And looking back, I think it's a little bit confusing where it is exactly. It's kind of stuck down a couple of corridors. You also need to find the switch to open it. I'll probably make that a little bit more intuitive in future maps. That was a really big focus in Vanilla Sky, just to make sure it's a bit more obvious where the player needs to go. It kind of flows easily. Yeah, stuff like getting these textures aligned. I'm sure that's a lot easier in the TFE editor. I haven't really tried that yet. One of my pet peeves in DF in the balancing is how much ammo you actually get. You get 15 units from every rifle you pick up, and most of those guys they just take 2 or 3 shots to take down. So you get tons of ammo for this rifle, and it's pretty, I think, overpowered. So I think in my later maps, I yeah lowered the ammo count for the pickups. Yeah, another memo. So got Captain Largo apparently causing issues for medical, sticking all those enemy guys in little closets where they have to wait for Katarin to just kind of turn up. So I think about now the concussion guys spawn in here. This fight's pretty nasty if you're in the open area, but fairly easy to cheese if you just kind of stick in the shadows where the enemies just can't see you. And for the time, DF are pretty good I mean, like how the shadow affects whether enemies can see you or not. Um, I mean, it's a pretty good system. It hasn't really been used much in maps, but with a bit of careful placement, you can actually do some decent, not quite stealth, but kind of yeah, sneak around until you can get the best shot at the enemies. I'll just mop up, deal the turret, and then little. Oh crap! Yeah, they can sneak up as well. Here we go. Yeah, so I really think I overdid the turrets in in this map. Um, but yeah, it's on hard, so you kind of know where stuff is. Um, yeah, let's see about this room. I think I got the scale a bit wrong, but I couldn't be bothered to make it smaller, Matthias. So I just redesigned it a bit so it kind of looks okay. But I think your scale in the end was a bit better. Um, but yeah, the fun fact is this is also nicked from Alien Vendetta. There's a room. I'm sure somebody else knows exactly which map, but there's a like a Doom library. So these would have been bookcases, and they had a similar lighting. So this is really just an experiment. I was doing quite a lot of those kind of things, like the earlier staircase. Like, okay, how do you use WD fuse to recreate geometry like you'd have in some of the more advanced, or at least I guess advanced vanilla compatible Doom maps? I know there's all these source ports and limit removing stuff, but yeah, there's also a whole bunch of map packs like Alien Vendetta and more recently the Back to Saturn series. I think there's a lot of tricks. Vanilla Doom in that sense is fairly similar to Dark Forces in terms of limits. Um, so lots of tricks on how to use sectors well without it becoming like an over detailed Doom cute mess that you also can kind of see when people really go wild. Right. Um, anyway, so this room is taken from Alien Vendetta, and it's really cool to see Matthias loaning it on the outside area for Harkov. Kind of cool to see what he did with that. Um, in design terms, it's super easy just to miss this code. I know I put the switch over here to unlock the door, but it's still really easy just to walk out without actually picking up the key code. But yeah, you can't solve everything, I think. Yeah, I love all these sort of glow in the dark lighting things you can do with TFE nowadays. So yeah, there's so much color and brightness you can bring in with these kind of lights. Yeah, so that's why the concussion rifle is overpowered. I really try and design so you can't just keep using it in narrow corridors. I try to do quite a lot of these kind of spaces where it just implies that there's more to the base. It's deep underground. There's lots of darkness. It's like way bigger and deeper than you're actually seeing. You're only seeing like a tiny part of the base. Kind of should feel like this could go on like for miles under some surface. You've got no idea where you are, just that it's really, really big. Yeah, so I use some generators to put some enemies here. I really like making the player go across the same area a couple of times. Like you get a bit more feeling for the topography. You make effective use of space. It really, I think, doing that. Hang on, there we go. So doing that a couple of times, I think it really helps just get a feel for, okay, so this connects to that. You can approach it from a different angle. I did that a lot in Vanilla Sky as well, and in my current map, it's happening a ton. But that's why I kind of like these sort of hub areas. Yeah, so then there's a concussion guy here. That's just me being an absolute bastard for anyone who hasn't actually played the map yet. Yeah, so that code key is like too different from the original code, so it's easy to remember. Yeah, so I use generators in this area, and I don't think I really did it that much in this map or in Pirate Raid, but in later maps I use generators and the new teleport function a lot to kind of repopulate other areas, put new enemies in different angles to like reuse the same area, but with slightly different gameplay. Um, it's a bit of a balance between you don't want to get the feeling that enemies are just popping out of thin air. So it's nice that there's a bit of distance between them and the player, or if there's a feasible reason for them to get there. But yeah, I try and do that a fair amount. Anyway, I don't know if there's any questions about this whole base area, but otherwise I'll kind of move on to the industrial area of the map. Just pick up a revive first. I think I was a fan of all the little red lights when not making this.
You're in violation of Imperial law.
Yeah, the stuff like that turret over there, I'd probably not do that now because you just, it's barely visible. You don't know it's there on your first playthrough. I think the new model is better. But I think there's some areas of this map where it's a bit overdone. And I think excessive turrets and concussion rifles, they just make the player a bit too cautious, like, oh, I don't want to go around the corner because there could be something right in my face. I'd like, yeah, like this guy. Yeah, you get hit by one of those guys once, and then you just go around every corner really carefully instead of just kind of having fun and running and gunning. But yeah, again, I think that's more the medium difficulty level, where I try and just facilitate that way. You can run in, you get a bit more health, you can make mistakes, you can screw up. And hard is just like, okay, you get shot a few times too many, and you just take so little health into the next fight that you're probably screwed. He didn't notice anything going on at all. He did. Yeah, what's you playing hard? Is that just running and gunning and killing absolutely everything? Yeah, so little pro-droid wave. Also something that I try and do fairly regularly in my maps. Use flying enemies to just pop up from behind scenery. The thing is, in Doom, it feels okay to just have enemies just teleporting in. They're magic, they're demons, they can do that kind of stuff. In Dark Forces, I know it shouldn't be like. I'm not really a fan of making stuff super realistic, and you have to have like every single. Oh, just to take an example, you got two parts of the base. And I think the only connecting point that you at least see is this little bridge. So I guess these guys have to go across the bridge every single day to get from bed to work. So yeah, I could like make a bigger bridge here, but I didn't really feel like it. So it doesn't have to be super realistic. But on the other hand, I don't like enemies just like popping out of thin air. But probe droids and other flying enemies, they're relatively easy just to say, well, stick them behind some scenery and set up a trigger. And they'll pop up over the scenery once the player gets close enough. And that can be a nice surprise here and there. fish. No, I didn't design it with that in mind. Actually, funny enough, this is the first area that I made in the map. I'd already been doing a little bit of experimenting with WD Fuse before that, and then I ended up with a map with, I guess, overlapping vertices. So I couldn't move, couldn't figure it out, I gave up and just started again. So I think this area was really the start of the map where I was just experimenting with copy and pasting the geometry and working out, okay, could I get this sense of, a limitless high canyon with a black ceiling? And in the process, I just set up this wall here to block the player from getting further. Actually, did I? Yeah, I think I did, because the original intention was to exit the map behind here, but I didn't do that in the end. But yeah, then the ball was there, and I guess when playing through, you just kind of notice, well, this would be a good spot to have enemies popping up, and then you have a couple here, and you have a couple over there. I think it's what I mentioned earlier. I think if you're setting up a lot of height differences, or really vertical spaces, so you've got little ledges here and a ledge there, you kind of keep seeing opportunities for, I could put an enemy there and I could put something behind that. And oh, maybe if you add one crate here, you can jump up. Like, I had this whole thing set up, and then I realized, oh, if I just move this panel a little bit further along, you can jump up here and you can put a secret by the waterfall. So I think if you're mapping and you've got like all these little ledges and vertical spaces, it could be an absolute bastard to texture, but it does create a lot of opportunities for stuff like a bit more variety in gameplay. So I try and do that, a lot more in Vanilla Sky, and in my current map, there's a couple of areas which I really regret. I think there's so many height differences, and then I try and think, okay, but how am I going to texture this this thing? How am I going to get that all lined up? Yeah, I'm sure there's enemies around there.
You're not authorized in this area.
Yeah, but this was the starting area of the map, and the whole idea. I think I worked kind of backwards towards the start from here, and created the more like secret base kind of vibe. And then this whole area and going forward is way more like industrial, the darker test base and Arc Hammer kind of textures, where it feels like, okay, you're sort of gradually going from a sleek Imperial base into their like dark machinery, building whatever super weapon this thing is meant to potentially be. And I really like doing like stuff like having these little ledges and some pipes, and I think that makes a lot of difference for just making each corridor slightly different. Yeah. The tram, we're not going to ride it just yet. You need maximum security clearance, whatever that is. Probably a key. But this is actually a fairly late addition, so about the design things. So I had that canal and a couple of the later areas had also kind of mapped out, and then I just moved them around and figured, okay, so I make the corridor wind that way, then you can hook it up over there, and this is probably where the exit is going to be. So this is like just a big empty cube for a long time. And the assumption was you'd get from here to the canal area and then you'd exit the base. Later, it was like, oh, you go from here and you'd have another freight elevator like at the start. And in the end, it just became that that tram that you see there now. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah. A welder. I've got no idea why I put that there, because you just shoot it and that's it. It doesn't actually do anything. set dressing, I guess. And another example where I'm still trying out the like the shading. I think I do that a bit more light touch now, but at the time I was really just loading up the level each time and looking at the lamp and seeing, okay, how far do you move to the left and the right, so you can actually still see a bit of light, that kind of stuff. Just getting this idea of, okay, so you'd have a shadow here and a shadow here. I think maybe if I make a smaller map, really lean into that, that could be kind of fun to sneak around, that kind of stuff. But you know, with really high contrast, it's either really bright or it's really dark. But it's pretty tough to do that consistently, I think. So up here, there's another example of the probe droids. You can't really just do it with stormtroopers. If you go up here, they'll generate up there. If you don't know they're there, they're a nasty surprise. If you do know they're there, they're just peanut gallery. But a nice little trick here I've noted is there's 3 generators and they spawn instantly. And then you kill the enemy, and then about 10 seconds later, it spawns again. So you can kind of, if you set it up right in large areas, you can like have a really continuous wave of enemies coming in. So you deal with one side, and then the other side is filled up again, and you'd have to keep going back and forth. Didn't really lean into that here that much. Yeah, and somebody put turrets in the dark here. Pretty unfair if you don't know they're there. I think this is something I leaned into a bit more with stuff like Pirate Raid, where because I was using mostly vanilla assets, I don't really know how to do stuff with 3DO, so I just use the stock 3DOs to try and make yeah, a bit more of a 3D space. All these little gantries going winding up. And again, another area that I think would be super simple now. But at the time, it took me absolutely ages to get set up. Oh, that was not a great idea. Actually, the playthrough is going a bit smoother than I remember some other runs going. Yeah, you think everything's too narrow, Matthias. No, I get what you mean. I mean, I think there's a bit of a balance where if it's like an urban area or stuff like Kharkov or like a normal Imperial base, um, it doesn't really make much sense to have all these little narrow ledges and that kind of stuff. It's just platforming and you know, gameplay. Um, but I think this area is really going for, okay, Carl was sort of infiltrating the industrial area, finding a way around that force field you saw earlier. Taking the way around, this is like not the very, it might be under construction, something like that. Yeah, so like here you've got all these little gantries. I guess I was just trying to imply this is the sneaky way in. You know, you wouldn't normally get enemies here. You do get somebody who puts a memo here. Yeah, that's the one, Ben, about the lack of guardrails. Damn finance. I'm pretty sure the safety hats will be great if you're working near the lava and you know this cliff edge here, no problem. Yeah, more turrets. I think I try and make turrets a bit more in your face nowadays, so it's pretty obvious that they're there, where they are. But I really like how stuff like the probe droids can sort of just roam around and surprise a player if you're not careful. Oh, but one of them is floating in the sky. I wonder why.
Stop where you are.
So this is meant to be like the core of the base, whatever that is. It's where they put all the sequencer couplings and lava and bottomless pits. Um, Actually, the lighting's kind of a funny, a funny thing. Made this whole area, and it looked absolutely hideous. It was way too bright, and I just couldn't get it looking very detailed, and I didn't really feel like detailing it. Um, so I just split up all the sectors and said, okay, I'll just make this sort of light go around from pitch black to really bright to hide how ugly this whole area is. But I guess that's just a cheap trick. If you don't want the detail in an area and you can't be bothered, or it's too big or something, just make it dark and make it flash, and that already helps a lot. Yeah, so again, some more probe droids. I think it's pretty cool. Like if they're alerted and they're behind that ledge, you can run straight forward. You wouldn't really expect them, and then suddenly they're like popping up over the ledge. So I think that's a nice way to use them. Anything else to mention about that? No, not really. Right, so now we're infiltrating the core. A double door. This one closes, and that one opens. And again, I think this is a fairly like low-key, giving a bit of a sense of 3D space. You come in through that door, the switch is underneath it. You go up and over. You end up here. And even if this was vanilla, you could probably get quite a long way with this kind of effect to just give a feeling of depth and height. So, lava, everyone's favorite platforming thing. So I know when I was originally editing DF, I guess this would have been around 2006. I was working on 2 or 3 maps that went way out of scope and never got released and would have been awesome, but they're lost to time. But one of them had a lot of lava, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I think at the time I set all the lava to be a depth of 100 DFU. So if you'd land in it, you'd basically die instantly. Um, I wouldn't do that now, I think, maybe. Um, but anyway, the whole feeling of this area is meant to be like, okay, this is the core, this is the industrial area. Kyle's infiltrating it. You're not welcome here. But before you really get to the big set piece battles, I just added some light platforming, puzzling to slow things down a bit. So, okay, how do you get in? You can see the door lower from here. It's meant to be just a light puzzle where, okay, if I open it, I can step on here and get up here as well. Funny thing is, when testing originally, I think the whole map was practically done, and it was only at the last minute I realized this door would be like down and this would be up at the same time, and it was just always wrong. I just hadn't noticed it at all. So nothing too complex, and I think it works okay because it's a really compact area, so it's not like you have to really seek it out. Yeah, this is another light puzzle. Okay, so you find out this switch. Okay, you flick it. These things go up. Yeah, then I can't do anything. So okay, they go down again. And I guess, again, this is an area where if you think about it, it makes no sense, but we'll get to that later. Okay, let's head across. As this is magic metal, they come out naturally and they can go up at the same time. And all this metal, it just disappears, I guess, when it does that. But how does this work? It's maybe worth mentioning because it's relevant to the tram later as well. So all these things, they kind of come out of the wall, and you can sort of see that this wall has lots of very narrow little gaps. So the way this works is you've got like a one room, the lava. Then you've got subsectors for the platforms, and then those subsectors have their own subsectors that are like this wall with really narrow gaps, so they can move laterally. So that's kind of a trick for an effect of stuff coming out of a wall. Condition Red also had like a sick bed that did that. Not really sure if they use it in the original Dark Forces or not. But yeah, it just made for a little fun small puzzle. Originally, the switches were both on this side, and then you could really lock yourself out. Where if you ended up on this side, you just couldn't. You'd soft lock yourself. You couldn't go any further. Um, but it worked out a lot better. Yeah, you'd have a reset button here in the end, and that just didn't work. Okay, so now you're up here,
Stop where you are.
and again, probe droids up here. So I just think it's a pretty neat effect. You've got enemies coming from the right, and one from the left. And that's the kind of thing I think I lean into a little bit more in later maps where um, once you start shooting, like this is all triggered, you get up here, the officer sees you, you start shooting, the probe droids come up, okay, enemies pop out from the right, they're alerted, then enemies pop out from the left. And if you kind of carefully set up an area and the enemies, you can have them coming in waves instead of all funneling down into one part of the map. If you add a bit of height variation, some might be above, some might be below. And I'll go into that, I guess, a bit more in stuff like if I do a playthrough of Vanilla Sky or my current map. So I could do that a lot more there. Um, and definitely in combination with generators and the teleporter trick. So with generators, you can just have enemies moving as soon as they're spawned. And with the teleport, you can easily put enemies in a unaware state behind corners. Even if they're in areas where they might normally have been alerted, they'll be unalerted, so they kind of stay in place to surprise the player or just attack from a certain angle. There's another memo here. Yeah, they won't replace sequencer couplings. It's all safe. Could be catastrophic, but you know, it'll never happen. Nobody will ever do anything to the sequencer couplings. Another thing to note about this area for these kind of puzzles, I'd love to see more of this in DF, and I'd love to do more of it myself. I'm a little bit too impatient with just making maps. I should probably just take the time to set up a couple of these and then build maps around them at some point. But again, some 3D space, ledger here, ledgers down there. And these were needed to make sure that if the player did drop down, you could loop back to start and not just get stuck and not be able to get out anymore. I think that's really what makes DF unique compared to something like Doom, where you can have stuff moving around and you can jump around and really work out the layout. And it's not like, I mean, I love Doom, absolutely love it. And I think there's some really creative stuff going on there as well. But the difference is, of course, every single ledge is, well, it's an obstacle, so you have to work out how to get around. And here you have to think a bit more vertically. you can't just block off players with like a 4 DFU ledge. Anyway, okay, so this opened up. Next part of the puzzle, how do you get there? So you just reset this lateral movement, and then you can get through here. Right, now we're really deep into the base, and I think I leaned into the yellow lights a bit more here. Really like that glow in the dark effect.
Rebel scum. You're not all.
Not really sure where that sound effect was from. Was it Shadows of the Empire? Could be. That's going to end well. And stuff that I really like doing in maps is you're sort of gradually moving the geometry downwards, so you just get this feeling like you're going deeper into the base or you're exiting the base, and just trying to get a feeling for it's gradually getting darker and more gloomy, and this whole area is meant to be quite narrow and constrained and feel fairly industrial, so that when you get to this area, like, oh, okay, it really opens up. This is probably where the shit's going to hit the fan. We've had the puzzling, we've had the narrow corridors, now we're back into the action. It's been fairly light on the combat, a bit of puzzling, a couple of low power enemies. And it's all really quiet. Nothing's going to happen here. And this is kind of a fun area to make. I thought, well, we've had a little bit of lava earlier, so we'll just have lots of lava here. I'm sure there's a good reason for it, and for why it's flowing upwards instead of downwards. I guess it just looks cool. I think this area, I just want to do something a little bit more different. It's kind of like I'm thinking more of Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, like when you get spoiler to Atlantis. Trying to go for that kind of feel, where it's all fiery and infernal machinery. I know that's a different game,
That's
but
one.
actually across here. Like I said earlier, I just like spawning in a couple of areas to give a different focus to an earlier area. I think there's something wrong with these probe droids that they just can't cross over. Now with the custom logics, I've given the Bosca enemies a lot more range, just to make it consistent with how you can use the concussion rifle as a player. Here their range is a bit short, so they can't always target the player. I guess it's a matter of taste whether you want them to snipe or not. Right, now we're going even deeper into the machinery. Like, okay, just access corridors, ominous, and some kind of room with a sequencer charge and an elevator. Pretty sure this would have killed vanilla DF with all the like small sectors and curves. Ah, there's health here, and there's more health here. I'm sure nothing's gonna go wrong. And I think this is the point in the map where I just really figured, okay, now we're gonna make it tough on the player. Definitely on hard. But if you know what's coming, you can prepare at least a little.
Dan would be proud.
If you're running around this arena with a DT2 and DT1s at close quarters, that's pretty nasty. To make it even worse, on hard I added this turret, which I think just took things a bit over the top. So I know I ease it by just putting the mines here. I'm pretty sure if you just drop yourself into this room and hit the switch, you're in deep trouble. Then again, there's plenty of extra lives, so that's what they're for. I think this is the point of the map where I figured, okay, now we're just going to try and go a bit further than standard Dark Forces difficulty. Now the Black Whirlwind, I love that weapon from the Archangel series. One daft thing about this layout is, looking back on it, it's really easy to miss this room. So you can just go out without picking up the powerful weapon, which is not a good idea. But it's a little bit too easy to miss. So this thing was not raised before. That's meant to be a bit of a warning sign. Okay, something's up. It's suspicious. Too damn quiet. And then this stuff lowers into the lava. At the time I didn't know how to have the player standing on there, but now I do. Okay, this fight really fries me every single time. Three DT2s, maybe a bit too much. Yeah, definitely too much. No, too late. Okay, where is that? First one, there it is. Right, so we get a bit of a breather. The way I try to set this up is one of them can fly around this arena, and the other two are like locked in place as turrets. And when you kill two of any of them, then this lowers for the next wave of enemies. Bit too much. It's going really well. Usually if you just run around here long enough, the phase 2 just kind of takes out the phase 1s with its rockets, but I'm not patient enough for that. There we go. Only lost one life. One thing worth mentioning here is, yeah, it's just the concept of the arena. I don't like it when it's overused, but just having the occasional, like, really clear arena where you're locked in, it's a tough challenge, you're let out when it's done. I think it can spice up maps. Really low on health now. Not doing myself any favors. Yeah, so I'd set up a key or a switch earlier on to open up these security doors just to make the progress a bit easier again. Let's just get out here. This is the point of the map where it's really meant to feel like you know, they know where you are. They're actively looking for the player, and you're just gonna have to fight your way out of the base. A bit more intense than the earlier phases of the map. Yeah, stuff like the drawbridge going up. And we're in another arena again. It's just one of these guys. Nothing else. One locked door. Obvious what's going to happen. Not exactly how it's going to go down, just that it's not going to be quiet for long. And this spawns in first a wave of probe droids on the edges. And then after about 20 seconds, these doors open up with spawned in stormtroopers. And then a phase one, and then finally a nope, and this is going really well. Then finally the concussion guy, very obtuse. I think I overdid this one a bit. But once you get up to the top, then all the generators for the stormtroopers and the probe droids stop. So you just have to mop up what's left. But I guess if you don't know where the elevator is, it's very tough to get out of this one. Where are you? Right. That's over. But again, this is just a concept of several waves of enemies. First the probes, then the stormtroopers with a height advantage, then a phase one to chase the player around, and then a concussion enemy and the exit to give a last little challenge. I think I overdid it a bit here, but it is the kind of thing I'm trying to do a bit more of in current maps where yeah, you kind of force the player to keep moving from one area or one wave to the next, and to try and alternate that a bit with more exploring and going from corridor to corridor. And yeah, Ben, definitely. If I put mortar enemies here, that would be pretty much impossible. But I think maybe if I'd redesign this a second time, I'd ditch the stormtroopers and just have, like, let's say one or two mortars at the top, so the player can be a little bit more focused on where the biggest threat is coming from. Anyway, enough about that.
There he is.
Yeah, this is one of the areas where I think if it's meant to be a main access, it's probably too narrow. It's just the way it is. I kind of painted myself into a corner with, okay, I've got this area here and that area here. How do I get the player from A to B? Yeah, this force field effect I nicked from Harkov. I prefer that to the completely empty force fields. Yeah, and I just added that backup key because in an earlier version, the Mm. original key could get lost down the sides of the elevator, which doesn't help the player much at all. Right, so we're at the tram. I guess this is what a couple of people had some questions about. Just before we move on to that area, I'm not sure if anyone's in the chat with any other questions or stuff that you'd like to know more about before we move on. Nope. All right then. So the tram, how does it work? Um, Originally, like I say, this was going to be hi there. Originally, this was going to be the exit to the map. It was just going to be an elevator going up or going back to the canal and then exiting from there. And at some point, I decided to try and make a tram here. Not really sure why exactly. And first, it was a matter of learning, okay, but how do you build a sector tram? Star's End has one, which I really looked at how it works. The construction is actually a little bit more complicated than it looks from the outside. Because if you've got these moving sectors, somebody's going to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding is that the morph move command, it moves um, the vertices of a sector. And let's get this right. If I'd, let's say, have these windows also move, then both sides of the wall would be moved at the same time by two different sectors, so they'd move at twice the speed. So you kind of get the effect where the tram gets pulled apart and the player falls into the void as soon as it starts moving. Um, so the way this is built up is actually with lots of little inset triangles on the window side, which ensures that every single wall is only moved by one sector. So that makes sure it all stays in place. So you got the center of the tram that moves, and the like little triangular invisible sectors on the side of the window they move, and that's also going to be important later. The whole tram is contained in one rectangular sector that moves as well, and that's used for some of the tricks happening later. And this is the kind of thing that I really like about the Force engine. You could do this technically originally in vanilla, but probably you'd end up in the Hall of Mirrors effect because there's just so many adjoins and sectors if you're not careful. So it works in Star's End. So it's a relatively simple construction, but something like this, you probably wouldn't even be able to make the track without stuff breaking. So the key thing just to take away for now is, okay, that's the construction of the tram, and it's contained in a rectangular sector. And what that means is that later on, you can use some adjoin trickery to switch the tram from one track to an identical looking track, but that other track might have some variation in the ceiling height or have a sky, for example, without the player actually noticing, because the tram has ledges from the inside. So the windows are low enough that you can't quite see where the edges of the rectangular sector are, so you can easily switch the tram from one track to another one to simulate the tram going under certain tunnels or going outdoors, for example. But I'll go into that in a bit more detail later. The other thing that's interesting to know is, everyone who mods DF knows that the morph move sectors can't cross other adjoins. Then it just goes out into the void. But this tram actually does seem to do that. So you've got these lateral moving doors. Yeah, so it goes from right to left. That's actually already done in stuff like the executor level with the cargo transport. It just moves out of the way in time for the tram to go through. But the door behind it is a vertical door. So it looks like the tram crosses that door, and later on, it looks like the tram is actually going into tunnels. So I'll activate it, and I'll activate the auto map. You can see one door moves to the left, and the other one goes vertically. If you look at the auto map, when the tram moves, the door that goes vertically, it moves out of the way just before the tram hits it. And you can kind of see it if you look up at the ceiling, you can see the texture just disappear for a moment. Right, just deal with these lads. Hmm. I'll go on then. That was a waste of ammo. Right, now that's cleaned up. Just back to the tram. So what you can kind of see is if we just take a look at the auto map and we look at the doors immediately in front of the before the tram. So the lateral moving door is the same as in Vanilla DF. It just moves out of the way just before the tram gets there, and it does so slowly because it's like just a lateral door. But actually, the vertical door and stuff like force field, they do the same thing using the technique we saw in the puzzle in the reactor core. Um, so they're basically a subsector with a hollowed out subsector simulating the wall, and it opens vertically, and just before the tram hits it, it moves out of the way with an instant speed. And because of the low ridge of the window, you don't actually see that happening, but it moves out of the way and then it moves back in place again instantly after the tram has passed it. So I think there's something like what 50, 60 stops on the tram where every single time, a fraction of a second before it would bump into an obstacle, it gives a call to move that obstacle out of the way. So that's enough for stuff like going through doors, passing force fields, or in some other scenarios, like making it look like you're going under pipes or under some bridges and stuff. But that's not quite enough for making the tram go to a room with a high ceiling, like we'll be doing next, or going outside, which we'll be doing after that. So just clean out the next area, and then we'll dive into how that works.
Surrender immediately.
Again, an area with some vertical space. And once the player is a bit distracted by the guys up here, that concussion guy pops out around the corner. We're just again trying to set up a little wave of enemies coming in, or drip feeding them into the control room. So here we get a view of the next area the tram is going through. The player doesn't actually go there, but I just kind of use this as a big set piece for just giving it again the impression that the facility is way bigger than what you're just seeing. Some welders, and there's another little train down here that goes underneath that tunnel there. And you can kind of see already the tram is going to come out of here, you know, that door over there in the force field, and it's going to go through that tunnel over there. And you can also see the ceiling here is higher than the original track. So how do we get the tram to get to the higher ceiling? Because it can't go from one sector to another. It can't cross the joins. What actually happens is, if you look at the map on the lower left-hand side, you can see the tram is going to go through a door into a fairly small compartment before it encounters that door over there in the force field. Now, what happens? Remember that the tram is in this rectangular sector. Once the first door closes, the tram is transferred to this track over here, which looks identical, and the room looks identical. Only the ceiling is higher. So we do that with the adjoin command. So the tram um, goes into that small room, the door closes, then the adjoin command switches the tram from the one sector to the other sector. But because the room is smaller than closed that the tram is contained in, the player doesn't actually notice. And then stuff like the force field and the door moving out of the way works identically to the earlier doors we saw. That's one part of it. And the other part of it is when the tram goes out of that sector, the track actually doesn't continue to the west like the other track does. But again, there's the first door you pass to is another subsector with a hollowed out part of it that simulates a door. So when the tram moves out of that tunnel, it's kind of chased by another moving sector that fills in the ceiling behind the tram. And you can also use that the other way around, like well, when it goes into the next tunnel over on that side, then the opposite happens. Once it passes the force field, then the ceiling gradually retracts in front of the tram. Um, so it goes kind of behind the next door. And then the same process repeats there. The door closes, the tram is switched from one track to the other track. And the next track does the same thing, only with a sky instead of a higher ceiling. So that's how the tram mechanism works. And the other thing that's maybe worth mentioning is this tunnel over here. Just uses the same technique as all these doors. I think there's about 16. You can kind of see the slight artifacts on the wall, but essentially all the sections of that tunnel are about 4D wide, and they retract just before the tram hits them, um, and then move back again once the tram has passed them. So they're like constantly moving away from the tram. Anyway, I'm not sure if there's any further questions about the technical aspects about that, but if there are, just drop them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just proceed. Actually, I didn't even disable the force field, did I? It's all this waffling. Now we can move on. So you can see the small enclosed space. The tram goes in there, and once the door closes behind it, it's switched over to the next part of the track. So this closes, and now the tram is in another sector. Note the other train going underneath the track. I just did that for fun. What isn't fun is if this tram crosses that tram at the same time, then it just breaks everything. So all these bits of ceiling just retract. There you can see it pop out to the north and then pop back in again. And once this door closes, then the same process repeats for the next sky area.
There's nothing like freedom.
All right, so the ceiling gradually fills in behind the tram. And then there's some more trickery to make it look like the train is actually going into that building. Same effect, slightly more complicated. Right. Keep dying in this area, so I'll just pay a bit of attention. Didn't help. And I just realized I completely forgot the final secret. We're just gonna have to cheat for that one. Yeah, again, once the tram enters this building, it kind of slots into an identical rectangular sector. And yeah, this really took a whole ton of scripting. I was actually on my way to Switzerland when I started on this and on the way back as well. It was in Deutsche Bahn. Absolutely everything was delayed and cancelled, so I had loads of time in the train to just try and get the whole setup working. What I'm going to do is cheat and go back and get a secret that I missed earlier. You can kind of see how it works. Yeah, so this has already been slotted in. Where is it? Here we go. You can see that this has all been moved out of the way. This is the original train track. Let's go back to this one secret. One more memo. The tram incident. The poor Lieutenant Farley was leaning towards the back of the tram, and then he fell right through and saw infinity. Anyone who's worked with dark forces in the past knows exactly which bug that refers to, but that's thankfully fixed in the Force engine nowadays. And yeah, Matthias, I had tons of time. I think it took, let's see, when I went back from Basel, the train was going to leave at about 8:30, and I got back in Holland about 10, 11 in the evening. So I was literally in the train with loads of detours all day and sore because I just ran a marathon in Switzerland. So I wasn't really very enthusiastic about that. How do I get back in? Hmm. Well, that's interesting. Here we go. Hope I didn't break any scripting by doing that, but we'll see. Yeah, so by all means, just dive into the map. I really wouldn't want to touch that code with the barge pole anytime soon. It's just a bit of a tedious area to clear out, but we'll get there in a moment. A couple of final things that I'd like to highlight. And then we're almost at the end of the map. Right. Just in quick order, this bridge then basically once the tram has crossed all the way from that side to this side and gone inside the building, then this exterior bridge is switched in and the join is set from the rooftop to the bridge. Before that, it's just a lower ceiling height and the no horizon used to simulate the roof actually being there. It's one thing to mention. And this is also a case where once this was built, I kind of thought, yeah, but the player can cross over to the other side. Can we actually use that for something? I'll get to that a bit later. I'm not really happy with the exterior section. It's way too blocky and the shading's all off, but I just really wanted to get this thing done after the whole tram thing had been finished. So it's kind of rough around the edges, but functional. One other thing that I think is really worth mentioning is that I really can't aim. There we go. There's actually some sneaky double adjoins tricks going on here. So you can see, for example, hey, you can see over the top of this corner of the building, but you can also go inside the building, which normally shouldn't be possible. This really lifts the double adjoin trick from Scapegoats. I think it was. No, is that the Scapegoat or it was who made that again? Somebody will help me out. Small showcase map for how you can simulate this by um, uh, adjoining the ceiling at the last moment. So if you open the door and then you quickly retreat, you can kind of see it flicker where it's quickly adjoining one to the other. This is a trick I hadn't seen it use in any other maps yet, so I just wanted to try it out in this map. The other case is this elevator. Same thing. You can drop down and you can open the door, but you can still like see the ceiling. And you use the elevator and you can just pop up onto the ceiling. That kind of uses the same trick. Only slightly more complicated. But I hope to see a bit more of that in maps, at least until we get the double joins in the Force engine. But it's actually fairly lightweight to implement, so it's pretty easy to use in, say, a Mos Eisley level. But basically, the way this works is once you approach the door, then it switches in the interior section, and when you go away from the door, it switches in the ceiling section. So you'll notice if you open the door and then go back quickly, then it closes instantly instead of after like 3 seconds. Because if it was open, then you couldn't do it at the top at the same time. You'll also notice some homes in this area. I really didn't want to do too much more detailing here because I think this is really on the edge of what the Force engine could still handle. Particularly after I added this Imperial symbol to the ceiling. Final secret. I figured, well, if a player is going to run across the bridge, then you better reward them. So I realized, well, there wasn't any real way to block off the player. So first I added a little secret down there. And then I added a secret over here. This is also a small thank you to SecBase, who really, really helped out in the testing of the map. So I put in a small reward for the players who found all 5 memos in the map with a little Easter egg from the Undermined map, which I really enjoyed.
You have done well to find me, my child. For the present, the vertices appear to be aligned. But we shall have need of you yet, should minds return.
It's a bit of a daft crossover with mines. It's like the Marvel universe of Dark Forces, only less terrible. If I revisit this map, I would definitely revisit the exterior geometry. I think that's become a lot smoother in recent efforts. And even if the player hadn't found all 5 memos, this is a reward, regardless. Yeah, how is the imp symbol done? That's just sectors. I think looking back, it would have been way easier just to make a 3DO. It's definitely less intensive on the system. No, but these are just subsectors. And originally it was all lit up from the start. And then I decided, well, let's just end the map that way. Switch that on. And then the searchlight or the symbol lights up just before the final boss fight. And again, first 2 DT2s come in. And then after about 20 seconds, the third one comes in. And once any 2 of those are taken out, then the Boba Fett equivalent drops in.
I'm ready to get out of this mess.
I copy.
And the sec base made the exit
Hold on.
view as well. Much appreciated.
Okay, Kyle, time to get out of here.
And that was it. That was the map. I think that covered all the design ideas and how stuff was done. I think just playing through the map again and looking back on stuff, I would definitely do stuff quite differently now. I mean, I really like how some areas panned out, and some areas are just so obtuse and a little bit too grindy for my preferences. Yeah, so I mean, I guess that's Ben's question. What was my main takeaway? This is really just an experiment in how far can I push the Force engine. I mean, I started off with the whole canal area, and I thought that was already on the edge, but it seemed to handle it fine. So then I doubled down on that with the starting area with a big view of the canyon. That also seemed to work fine. So then I just kind of kept pushing it from there to, well, this area where I kind of figured, well, can I take that tram, and then can I make that a bit more complex? And oh, can it go outside? And actually, how big can I make this exterior area? Can the engine handle that? The answer was yes, it can. So it really, I think the main takeaway was the engine can actually handle quite a lot within reason. I found it really helpful to really work with stock textures instead of just all the custom assets. think it really helped me get a bit of a feel for how should a normal Dark Forces level look. How do various things play well together? Stuff like this little edge texture. Um, it was really just getting a feel for how everything works again. What I definitely do differently is I'd like it to be a little bit less linear. I think the first part is the part I just enjoy playing the most, and then some of the boss fights are a little bit too cramped and tough. So I think for my next maps, I try to make it feel a bit more like the players exploring um, a single area instead of, oh, I think if you zoom out all the way, um, yeah, this is the main part of the map. You can kind of see it's all fairly, the individual areas are nice and vertical, but the whole thing is actually kind of sprawling and you don't really revisit areas that much. And if you look at my more recent maps, you kind of crisscross the same area multiple times. Pirate raid, you go like around the base, into the base, and then out of it again. Even something like Cold Heart, which now this is about 3,800 sectors, and Cold Heart I think edged about 6,000. That's a big map, but even that feels a bit more interconnected than this does. What else would I take away from this? Yeah, the INF stuff. I really wouldn't have been able to do that in the past. Yeah, Matthias. Um, Stuff about the. Did I get the idea of rejoining and then thought it can be used for the tram? I think that was just really gradually getting more familiar with how INF works, and then you use the join command a bit more, and then I kind of thought, yeah, but if you use it in this way, then you could actually get the tram going outside. There wasn't really a thought in it up front. It was more like, hang on a second, if you expand it with this, then you could maybe achieve that effect. And that kind of started out with the, you can cross force fields and you can cross doors. And then it became, but if you do this, then maybe you could also make it go outside and go inside again. Um, so I'd really encourage people to just, go with it, try things out, iterate on it. I think WD Fuse in its current state makes it really easy just to drop in and test something. Yeah. Any other takeaways? I guess maybe that's better saved for playthroughs of later maps at some point. Yes, it did start. Well, third hour of Deutsche Bahn delays. I think my power bank was out of juice by then. But no, it was really just knuckling it down and getting stuff working. Oh, yeah, and the other thing that I actually took away from this map was using scripting. I gradually got a bit more confident in enemy placement and how to do that. And I think in later maps, I really try to use that a lot more to focus combat and keep even the exploring a little bit more fresh. And by that time, the custom logics came along as well, so that really opened up, a lot of possibilities. Okay. Any further questions or remarks? Otherwise, time to close down, I think. Let's see. I actually didn't, Ben, at this point. So did I have that workflow? There's not actually a workflow for keyboard shortcuts and stuff. Like I said, this map was really, I think, relatively slow going compared to what I'm doing now. I didn't. What didn't I know at the time, or at least rarely use, was the ability to snap vertices to each other. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to edit the wall length manually. I didn't use dummy sectors as like a sketch to snap the final areas to. So this is really, curved areas was a lot of manual work. I think this took me the better part of 3 or 4 months to get set up. and now I probably do the equivalent a lot faster. But maybe I'll save that for another time, or maybe not, because WD Fuse is going to be obsolete at some point in the near future. Um, yeah, so no real workflow on this map. Nope. And the 3D stuff, now that's just really what I enjoy doing. I think when I was at school about 20 years ago, I'd just be doodling these things on paper all the time, and I just really like the limit of dark forces that you can only have um, like one join at a time. And one thing I really like experimenting with, and I did that a lot more with Cold Heart and definitely more with Vanilla Sky, um, is I just kind of look at a map once it's set up and see, well, where haven't I joined something yet? And can I use that to, even if it's just to hook it up to an air vent or give a small view to an exterior area that you can see from elsewhere in the map, um, then you kind of just start looking how do the various rooms and the exterior sections link up. It's not. I don't think it's really a. It's not much of a 3D imagination. One thing I really love about WD Fuse compared to Dark Forge is you can just. I don't use the preview. I just launch up Dark Forces and just run around. Ah, it works. Okay, cool. It doesn't work. Okay, I'll tweak it and then run it again and see if it looks a bit better. But I tell you what, I'll just give a quick sneak peek. Why the heck not? Let's see. Yeah, spoiler alert. So switch off if you don't want any spoilers. I hope to show a bit more of this kind of stuff in the future, where you've got stuff like this bridge crossing the water, but you're also able to cross over the top. If you want to see more about how that works, then we're gonna have to wait for another stream. All right. Hey, thanks all for attending. It's really cool that there are people interested just to see how this map was made. I really enjoyed making it. I enjoyed sharing how it was made. Um, thanks, and wish you all a good morning or evening wherever you are.